Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my AM reading video for, well, it was supposed to be a Friday Reads, which oftentimes I film and post on Saturdays, but we're even well past that now, and I'm looking into the beginning of a new week on Monday, and essentially, I'm just coming off of a 3-day holiday weekend where, my plans kind of went to pot and I kind of lost a lot of discipline, and I was just not getting as much done. So here I am now, finally ready to film this video, and I guess I would call it my June 2026 holiday weekend AM reading. I also am looking at a surprisingly low battery. I didn't think it would be quite this low, so maybe that'll help me keep this short and sweet so that I can actually quickly update you and then post this video and hopefully move on with life, because still got a lot of things I want to stumble back on track with my reading and my booktube, and now work is starting up again, so aye. But anyway, here we go. As always for these AM reading videos, I'm going to start by reviewing a short story in a literary journal. Right now I'm actually reading from an anthology, Frankly Feminist, which is comprised of short stories that were published in Lilith, which is a Jewish women's magazine. So several stories throughout the last few decades. And anyway, I just read Sylvia's Spoon by Michelle Brafman, and this is a story I'm pretty sure I've also read in the past, several years ago, I think in one of her books of short stories. And so this is a book that begins at a funeral where our main character, Hannah, steals a silver spoon that came from the old country and was in the possession of her great aunt, Sylvie, who had just died. And she is hoping superstitiously that this could be used as a talisman so that she could keep the baby that she is currently pregnant with, but she has a history of miscarriages, and I think the spoon has like a superstitious, thought in her family. So she was going to name the daughter after Sylvie, and that, this would be her pact with God. But it ends up, unfortunately, even though she advanced further in this pregnancy than usual, she did lose this baby as well. And it goes into all sorts of things about her still engaging in superstitious activity, where she, I think, first tries to save some of the, the miscarriage, and then she kind of makes a fetus out of some food, that items that actually also have significant meaning for her, like a jam from a friend and that sort of thing. And she's in mourning and sort of dissociating, and then she admits to her mother what she did, which her mother finds appalling, in part because she doesn't share the same superstitions, but then it kind of gets into how Sylvie herself was this childless spinster lady, and ever since Hannah was young, she would, be enacting rites of motherhood with the spoon at her aunt's house, and it would make her great aunt very unhappy. And so maybe like the story shifts into thinking, well, the superstition went another way, that this was maybe an act of cruelty that had to be punished. But anyway, it really, and it ends with her burying the spoon with her aunt, at her aunt's grave. But it's a story really of, of loss and of family and of trying to make sense of, these sort of tragedies about, desire for children and not being able to have them, and then family legacy through this object. Next, I finished Marry Me by Midnight by Felicia Grossman, which I read as my BookTube spin book, one of my TBR games I play. I read this as a part of my Jewish romance reading list, which I had very high hopes for, because I think I have trouble with contemporary romance, but this is historical romance. This is from the Regency era, and in fact, this is book one of Once Upon an East End. And our two main characters, our lovers, are Isabel Lyra and Aaron Ellenberg, who are two Jews from opposite sides of the track in the Regency era. Isabel Lyra is a Sephardic Jew. Her people have been in England pretty much ever since England had invited the Jews back a few generations earlier, and her family is prominent and wealthy and have a business that her father and grandfather ran. Her father recently died and left no male heirs, and Isabel really feels like, this is her legacy and she wants to run it, but her father was in business with another family, the Barabs, who kind of want to take over, or that's how she sees it, and they especially there's three brothers, and so the oldest brother who's married wants one of his younger brothers who are unmarried to basically be her husband, to kind of keep things in the family, and she's resisting because she kind of wants more control over her destiny and to kind of like how she sees it as her father's, legacy. So she decides that she's going to marry someone else, and that she enlists Aaron's help basically to get the dirt on some potential suitors, so that she could maybe be able to control them to do what she wants with the business. And this is also a time in the Regency era, of course women all around don't have that much power on their own, but for Jews it's a auspicious time, because around this time the Gentile aristocracy was debating, giving all Jews some sort of citizenship rights. And they're mostly in contact with these wealthy Sephardic Jews, and so the community is anxious maybe to keep a good face as well with the Gentiles, so that, maybe, things can go well so that the entire community can benefit with more rights. But Aaron Ellenberg is from the other side of the tracks. He is this impoverished Ashkenazi Jew who just came over as an orphan. And the Ashkenazi Jews are, poorer and considered to be more backward and that sort of thing. And Aaron is also just like cursed even more than that, because he's an orphan and because he's had little luck sort of maintaining a livelihood for himself. He's lost apprenticeships and that sort of thing and isn't a scholar. So he's kind of seen as, a big nobody, and his skills are not really all that appreciated. He now is a caretaker at the synagogue, and he secretly sort of takes care of some animals, and he's like a favorite storyteller to the children. And this is where Isabel comes across him and thinks he'd be like the perfect spy to sort of get the dirt on her suitors, and that, he was a man, but he's also like a lower man, so maybe they let their guard down with their secrets. And then she was going to hold a series of balls around the Jewish festivals, basically to interact with her suitors and then choose one at the end of this series of festivals. And so anyway, what ends up happening, surprisingly, is that Isabel and Aaron kind of fall for each other. And I guess the whole idea of all of these suitors goes by the wayside really quickly, and she kind of picks one. And there's like a little bit of intrigue in the background about, who her suitor, Mr. Weiss, is, and, how she can control him, or what does he want. But mostly the two of them are flirting. Aaron and Isabel are flirting, and then getting even more and more comfortable with each other, and so that this particular romance definitely goes into erotic territory. And so we see a lot of sexy times between these two, which they kind of think they're hiding and kind of aren't. There is a fairy godmother figure named Miriam who's trying to look out for Aaron, and this is also billed as a gender-bent Cinderella retelling, but without magic and not with sort of the specifics of the Cinderella story, but there are some broad strokes with this woman Miriam, kind of like a fairy godmother, and Aaron taking care of, cats and mice, the way that Cinderella did. And then, having to announce betrothal by midnight, that sort of thing. But I think at the end of the day, Isabel has to realize, all of this scheming gets her nowhere, and that, her legacy with her father is worth more than, just sort of maintaining the business with manipulation, and that, maybe the Barabs even aren't as, I don't know, at first I thought maybe they were analogs for the evil stepmother and stepsisters, but that's a little simplistic too, and that's what Isabel comes to realize as well, so that maybe she could follow her heart even though she's not supposed to be with someone like Aaron. Aaron himself wants to, he's after, well, at first he wants the money that she promises him to help her, because then that could provide a nest egg for him to start a new life. But actually, the Barabs and Weiss are cottoning on to the idea of his, involvement in this, and so there is a little bit of danger, involved, and so Aaron is also debating, should he just start fresh in America, and anyway, but so, but this is a romance, so ultimately the two of them have to come together for more than just subterfuge and sex. And so that is what happens. And I did enjoy it. I thought I enjoyed it more than I enjoyed the contemporaries. I think the historical context was a little meatier, and I do appreciate sort of the witticisms in this, and I feel like there was, more going on for Isabel. Maybe I especially liked, I feel like in a lot of the contemporary Jewish romances, there's this nostalgia, like so many of the lovers are like from the past, like that, these people couldn't get over, their past relationships or something, so there's something that felt so reductive about them, whereas Isabel and Aaron are ultimately about facing the future together and realizing that they should change their bad habits from before and move forward together. So there's something a little more adult about this, not just from the sexual content. So I did appreciate it more, although I think I didn't, fall head over heels with it. Maybe the witticism is a little too dry and Austen-esque for me. And there was still a lot of characters to try to follow with this, but, I still think it was okay. I mean, I still liked it, I think, more than most romances that I read, so I'm hesitantly hopeful, for future historical romance. And to end with a little more broadly on the Once Upon the East End series, I pulled up the author's webpage, and so these are the 3 books so far in the series. We're following other characters who were introduced in this book. So this is the first book. I mean, the cover, maybe you can see, it's relatively tame, I think, but then things get more and more salacious. So if I can go back to them to show you. Like into, shaddily clad people in bed, or here's the book that actually is coming out at the end of this month. This is Dearest Beast, which this cover, I'm not even sure how long I can hold it onto YouTube without, facing some sort of consequences, because this is the sort of salacious cover I remember seeing in my grandmother's house. She used to keep these like erotic, smutty romance books actually in the room where my sister and I slept when we came to visit. But I mean, look at this, the man is completely like undressed, at least from the top, and the woman's dress looks almost more like a, a sheet from the bed, and like this pose is, woo! This is not what I'd expect from a Regency era, but I'm wondering, maybe this is at least a little more honest to, the eroticism that might be in the next 2 books, given what was in the first one. Well, moving away from sexy times, the next book I have to talk about is As a Jew, Reclaiming Our Story from Those Who Blame, Shame, and Try to Erase Us by Sara Hurwitz. And this is actually the last of my anticipated 2025 releases that I put onto my resolutions list at the beginning of the year. So now I'm moving on purely into my resolution of anticipated 2026 releases. Huzzah! So checking off resolution is always good. So Sara Hurwitz, she actually cut her teeth as a speechwriter for the Obamas. At that time, she was a young adult, nominally Jewish woman living in Washington, D.C., the type of person who's not all that connected to, the history or religion or culture at all, really. But then she kind of stumbles into it by accident in her mid to late 30s after a breakup where she decides just to get out of the house to take an Intro to Judaism course, and it kind of opens her mind to the idea of a Jewish, belonging and peoplehood that's much richer than what she remembers from her Sunday school days or what have you. And actually that book is here all along, which is right here. I really appreciated that book as someone who also kind of had a comeback to Judaism moment, a little younger than her actually, technically, but she seems to have done a lot more research and so forth since her sort of return. This one is much more specific to the idea of anti-Semitism and what it is, and trying to understand sort of the systemic nature to it, how it's evolved throughout, especially the last 2,000 years since Christendom, and trying to see sort of, how the patterns continue on to this day, particularly, she's been influenced by post-October 7th realities, where she went around to various schools, universities, and talked with a lot of Jewish students who have been harassed. And it also goes into her stint around COVID as a chaplain, and how she was sort of personally confronting a lot of Gentile communal thoughts about Judaism being this, rigid, law-based religion following a just severe, angry God, and how she'd internalized a lot of that thinking, and that it doesn't actually jive with all of the studies she's done about how Judaism actually has evolved throughout the last 2,000 years. So I did appreciate this book, but not as much as the other one, maybe because of the anti-Semitism thing. It's just, even she agrees, that's not what we want the Jewish story to be about, and to a certain extent it involves, trying to understand anti-Semitism involves a little bit of broad thinking that can, I think sometimes maybe lose a little bit of nuance in and of itself about what's going on and why, or what the history is. I think it was easy in this book in some cases to focus on the worst violence that was inflicted against Jews, and I wonder, there's a few images in here that are just, really harrowing in their violence, and I wonder if she overstated them a little bit. Not that they didn't happen, but that, it wasn't, a common experience through the ages. And so, and obviously another thing, a barrier of today is to look at anti-Semitism as it coincides with anti-Zionism and a criticism of Israel, because we're in very different waters now that, the Jewish state in and of itself is a system, the way that all nation states are systems, so that there is systemic abuse in all systems, and it's not just all conspiracy anymore about, blaming a beleaguered oppressed group, but also there are still lines of anti-Semitism, and when it, morphs into anti-Semitism from there, because that still can happen, and I think that she offered some good arguments about how this fits into older anti-Semitic tropes and history. So I did appreciate that, but I'm still trying to put my thoughts together. I don't think it flowed quite as easily as the last book, but the whole idea was she was trying to give a narrative mainframe to Jews like her that they were so disconnected from the community for most of their lives that they might have internalized some simplistic and outsider opinions that aren't accurate to actually what Jewish peoplehood in history has been about. The fact that I'm calling it Jewish peoplehood has to do with the fact that, Judaism is an ethno-religion, and it's, it's not the same as Protestantism, but or other global religions, but in a way that's how, in the U.S. especially, since she's been writing from a U.S. perspective, it's, that's her background and mine, that's how we've sort of been slotted into, Judaism has been slotted into something that's a little too narrow for it, and we're trying to move beyond that in a way too, and sort of think about Judaism as defined by ourselves and not by others. So yeah, I overall appreciated this book, and I appreciate where she's coming from with this book, because I think there's just a very contemporary edge that could hopefully speak to a lot of where unaffiliated Jews or Jews who haven't been quite in the community before, which can be a lot of Jews in America. This is could be a argument for them to begin with about how to try to make sense of anti-Semitism beyond sort of just shrugging that, bigotry is bigotry, but obviously, there is a broader narrative to try to grapple with here. And the final book I'll talk about, speaking of anti-Semitism, is Our Little Histories by Janice Weizman. This is my Buzzwordathon cover pick for June. That's the month we're in. And this is a book that's kind of told in vignettes going backwards in time, following members of an extended family. We start near the modern day when one character, who is this sort of cultural museum expert, is contacted by a man in Belarus after she does a successful sort of exhibit with bringing to life like the folklore of a indigenous group in America. She brought it to life by bringing in actors to sort of show their daily activities from years and years ago. And this lucrative Belarusian man wants her to do that with the lost Jewish community of Belarus. Like, this is, it's sort of a commentary on Eastern Europe in the modern day, trying to sort of reconnect to the Jewish communities that aren't really there anymore. Although I think, once again, speaking of narratives and how different groups use them, it's, there's questions arise in this part of the story about how much of it is actually authentic and how much of it is the Belarusians trying to sort of make a circus out of it, I suppose, to be the most uncharitable. But this woman does get into it, and she even contacts her own relatives, distant cousins from Israel, to sort of play out the parts of this 19th century Ashkenazi family who might have lived in Belarus at the time, which their family actually did. And so throughout this story, she's kind of confronting like the lines between reality and fiction and what she is doing with her family here. And there's also this thread in here that her side of the family and the Israeli side of the family have this old 1918 copy of poetry that came from the family that actually, when they lived in Belarus before they started to immigrate away during the worst of the pogroms. And so the rest of the story takes us back in vignette form to various members of the family moving back in time, although it seems like we're mostly following so far the Israeli family, who have a history on a kibbutz, and one of the relatives a couple of generations ago came over right before the Holocaust to live on the kibbutz. She had these strong Zionist sentiments, but then we also, in one of the storylines, are in the 1960s when one relative from the American side is visiting, and it opens up the idea of this lost history, especially since the kibbutz movement was very built on letting go of diaspora identities and exile identities. So, people gave up their Yiddish and gave up, old memories or heirlooms. And so in that vein, the story actually kind of takes up the slack with that, because we go back in the past and we learn more about the real history of the family through this artifact. And I am appreciating it, and I don't think I can go into much more detail because I do see my battery is about to die, so I'll report back. So yeah, that about covers it for me now. I will leave a link to more information about, I guess, Once Upon an East End in particular, since I kind of talked about that series in the most depth. I also, just to, be a little kinder to myself, I did achieve one significant thing this long weekend, in that my Jewish choral group, Hakol, we did a concert of sorts on Father's Day at a local Hebrew home for senior citizens, where we got to sing our whole repertoire of songs that we'd been practicing this whole semester for the last several months. And my parents actually came in to hear me sing, which meant a lot to me. And then I got to spend, time with my father and my mother for Father's Day. So that part felt really great, and I'm very happy to be part of this Jewish choral group. Our latest semester has just ended, and we have several months we're taking off for the summer, but we'll be back in September, so hopefully I'll be able to continue on with this group, and so I'll link them down below as well. And yeah, other than that, I hope to be back in the next few days trying to eke myself back on the schedule here. I have a Would You Read It challenge video, which is a meme where you take a variety of books and you read the first few paragraphs, or that's how I do it, with my audience to talk about them. And I use the BookTube Prize fiction division as my template for that, so stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.